A racist CEO humiliates a black janitor at the office. Unaware of who the employee watching is, the clock ticked past midnight at Whitmore Enterprises, and the hallways were eerily silent, save for the gentle hum of fluorescent lights. Marcus Evans moved methodically, his mop gliding over the polished marble floor of the executive suite. The routine of cleaning offered him a sense of peace, a rhythm that was both familiar and comforting. Yet tonight, there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. As Marcus worked, the muted sound of voices drifted from the CEO's office at the end of the corridor. Curiosity piqued, he paused, his mop resting against the bucket. The door to Richard Whitmore's office was ajar, and Marcus could hear the low timbre of the CEO's voice, laced with a tone of superiority that was unmistakable. "Honestly, I don't know why we're spending so much on janitorial services," Richard remarked, his voice carrying a sneer. "These people are replaceable. It's not like they're adding any real value to the company." Marcus felt a flush of heat rise to his cheeks, the words cutting through the silence like a blade. He knew he shouldn't eavesdrop, but the sting of the insult kept him rooted to the spot. He strained to hear more, his heart pounding in his chest. Richard continued, oblivious to the effect his words were having. "If they disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even notice? I doubt it." The laughter that followed was a chorus of agreement, echoing in Marcus's ears. The callousness of it all hit him hard, and he found himself gripping the handle of his mop tightly, as though it were the only thing keeping him grounded. As the voices faded into the background, Marcus resumed his work, but his mind was far from the task at hand. The words reverberated in his head, a constant reminder of the gulf between those who wielded power and those who didn't. He had always prided himself on his work ethic and his ability to rise above the daily slights and microaggressions, but tonight felt different. He paused, leaning against the wall, his thoughts a whirlwind of frustration and helplessness. What was he to do? Confronting Richard seemed like an exercise in futility, potentially risking his job in the process. Yet the idea of remaining silent, of accepting the humiliation, gnawed at his sense of dignity. Marcus closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, willing himself to calm. He needed to think clearly, to weigh his options carefully. But the anger simmered beneath the surface, a slow burn that refused to be extinguished. Unbeknownst to Marcus, he was not alone in his observation. From behind the mirrored glass of a hidden observation room, Elijah Evans watched the scene unfold. As one of the company's largest investors, Elijah had taken a keen interest in the inner workings of Whitmore Enterprises, though he preferred to remain in the shadows. Tonight, his attention was drawn to the janitor standing outside the CEO's office, a man who bore a striking resemblance to someone he once knew, Marcus, Elijah's nephew. The years of separation had not dulled Elijah's protective instincts, and as he listened to Richard's dismissive remarks, a plan began to form in his mind. Elijah had long been disillusioned with the corporate world's lack of empathy and respect, and here he saw an opportunity to effect change. As the night wore on, Marcus continued his work, but the weight of Richard's words lingered heavily on his shoulders. The decision gnawed at him, a constant presence that refused to be ignored. He knew the risks, but something deep within him yearned for action, for a reclaiming of his dignity. By the time the morning light began to filter through the windows, Marcus had made up his mind. He would confront Richard. Not with anger, but with a quiet strength that came from knowing his own worth. He had nothing left to lose but his pride, and that he would not surrender. Marcus's resolve was tested almost immediately. As daylight broke, the office came alive with the bustle of employees, and Richard Whitmore himself sauntered into the executive suite, his presence commanding and unchallenged. Marcus waited, his opportunity arriving as Richard paused to speak with a group of executives near the receptions area. The conversation was light, filled with the usual pleasantries, but Marcus's heart raced as he approached, his footsteps echoing in the expansive lobby. "Mr. Whitmore," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the tumult within. Richard turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his features at being addressed so directly by a janitor. "Yes," Richard replied, his tone dismissive. "I couldn't help but overhear your comments last night," Marcus continued, meeting Richard's gaze. "And I felt it important to remind you that every role in this company has values whether you choose to see it or not." The room fell silent, the eyes of several employees turning toward them. a mixture of shock and curiosity on their faces. Marcus stood his ground, his heart a drumbeat in his chest, but his resolve unshaken. Richard's expression shifted from surprise to amusement, a condescending smile playing on his lips. "I see. Well, Mr. Evans, perhaps you should focus on doing your job rather than listening in on conversations that don't concern you." Marcus felt the weight of the moment, the challenge inherent in Richard's words. But he held his head high, his voice unwavering. "Respect is earned, Mr. Whitmore, and it's a two-way street." The tension in the room was palpable, the air heavy with the unspoken challenge. Marcus felt the eyes of his colleagues on him, their silent support a balm to his frayed nerves. Richard's smile faltered, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. Before he could respond, the sound of slow applause filled the air. Elijah Evans stepped into view, his presence commanding and unexpected. "Bravo, Marcus," Elijah said, his voice carrying a quiet authority. The room turned to him, the revelation of his identity sending ripples through the gathered employees. Marcus's heart skipped a beat, recognition dawning as he took in the sight of his uncle, the man he hadn't seen in years. The connection between them was undeniable, a shared history that spoke volumes without words. Elijah's gaze shifted to Richard, a steely determination in his eyes. "It's time for a change, Richard, and it starts with acknowledging the worth of every individual in this company." Richard's expression soured, the realization of Elijah's influence settling in. The power dynamics shifted, the balance tipping in Marcus's favor. The room was abuzz with whispered conversations and exchanged glances, the atmosphere charged with a mix of surprise and anticipation. Marcus stood rooted to the spot, still processing the sudden shift in his reality. Elijah Evans, his uncle, whom he had not seen for years, was here, and apparently wielded considerable influence over Whitmore Enterprises. Richard Whitmore's face was a study in barely contained indignation. The presence of Elijah, a man whose investments could make or break the company, had clearly thrown him off balance. Marcus could see the gears turning in Richard's mind, searching for a way to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Evans," Richard began, his voice clipped yet attempting to maintain a veneer of cordiality. "I assure you that our janitorial staff is valued, but we must also consider the financial implications of—" Elijah raised a hand, silencing Richard with a simple gesture. "Financial implications are important, Richard, but not at the expense of human dignity." Marcus is right. Respect is a two-way street, and it's high time this company reflects that in its practices. Marcus watched as Elijah's words landed like a hammer blow, the authority in them undeniable. There was a murmur of agreement from the employees gathered nearby, emboldened by the unexpected support from someone of Elijah's stature. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, his usual confidence shattered. Marcus almost felt a twinge of pity for the man, caught in a net of his own making. But the satisfaction of seeing Richard squirm was tempered by the reality of what was unfolding. This was more than just a personal victory. It was a chance for real change. Elijah stepped forward, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. The gesture was warm, familial, a reassurance that Marcus had long yearned for. "Marcus, your courage to speak up has set the wheels in motion for something important here. I've been watching this company for a while, hoping to find someone willing to stand for what's right. I'm proud that it's you." Marcus met his uncle's eyes, the connection between them reigniting something he thought lost. A sense of belonging, of being seen and valued not just for his work, but for who he was. Richard, regaining a semblance of composure, attempted to pivot. "Of course we can discuss how to enhance our workplace environment, Mr. Evans. Perhaps a task force or—" Elijah interrupted again, his tone decisive. "No half measures, Richard. We need a culture shift, starting from the top down. This company should be a model of respect and equality, not just another corporate machine." Marcus felt the truth of Elijah's words resonate within him. It was as if the walls of the corporate hierarchy were crumbling, revealing a path forward that was built on fairness and mutual respect. The employees nearby began to murmur amongst themselves, the buzz of conversation growing as they absorbed the implications of what was happening. Marcus could see hope flickering in their eyes, a shared understanding that this was a pivotal moment. Richard's expression hardened, his reluctance plain to see, but the pressure of Elijah's expectations and the murmurs of the employees left him with little room to maneuver. "Very well," he finally relented, though his voice carried a hint of defeat. We'll convene a meeting with the board to outline these changes. Elijah nodded approvingly, his gaze sweeping the room. I'll be there to ensure it happens. And Marcus, he added, turning back to his nephew, I'd like you involved in those discussions. Your voice deserves to be heard. Marcus felt a swell of pride and gratitude, his resolve firming. This was a chance not only to right a wrong, but to be part of something larger than himself. He had always worked hard, but now he realized he could also work smart, using his position to influence the company's future direction. As the crowd began to disperse, the buzz of conversation lingering, Marcus caught sight of the glances exchanged between employees. Glances filled with newfound respect and camaraderie. They nodded to him, silently acknowledging the shift he had helped to spark. The day wore on, but the events of that morning lingered in Marcus's mind. He continued with his duties, but there was a new lightness to his step, a sense of purpose that transcended the routine tasks. He was no longer just a janitor. He was an agent of change, a catalyst for a better, more inclusive workplace. Later, as the office began to quiet down once more, Marcus found himself back in the corridors, mop in hand. The physical act of cleaning was the same, yet everything had changed. He paused for a moment, looking out over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline painted with the hues of dusk. Marcus knew the road ahead would not be easy. Change rarely was, but with Elijah's support and the backing of his colleagues, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt truly hopeful. Marcus returned to work the next day with a renewed sense of purpose. The atmosphere at Whitmore Enterprises was palpably different, charged with anticipation. Word of the previous day's events had spread like wildfire, and employees whispered among themselves, speculating on what changes might come. As he made his way to the janitorial closet, Marcus noticed the nods and smiles from colleagues who had previously overlooked him. It was a small sign, but significant. His actions had inspired something in them, a belief that they too could be part of a company that valued every individual. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Marcus went about his duties with an alertness heightened by the knowledge that today he would be sitting at a table with the board of directors. He felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety at the prospect. He was determined to ensure the voices of those often unheard would be represented. Richard Whitmore, meanwhile, was not taking the recent developments lightly. In his office, he paced back and forth, his frustration growing. The idea of having to answer to Elijah Evans, let alone Marcus, was galling. He prided himself on his leadership, yet now he was being forced to reconsider his approach, and it was grating. Mr. Whitmore, his executive assistant Jane, interrupted his thoughts. The board meeting is scheduled for 2 o'clock. Mr. Evans has confirmed his attendance, and Mr. Marcus Evans will be joining as well. Richard's jaw tightened at the mention of Marcus. Thank you, Jane. Make sure everything is in order. Yes, sir, Jane replied, her tone professional, yet there was a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. She, like many others, had witnessed Marcus's brave stand and found herself rooting for him. As the clock approached 2, the boardroom filled with the company's top executives. Marcus entered the room, flanked by Elijah, whose presence commanded immediate respect. The conversation hushed as they took their seats, all eyes turning to Richard as the meeting commenced. Thank you all for coming, Richard began, his voice even but strained. We're here to discuss the cultural changes proposed by Mr. Evans, he gestured towards Elijah, and our esteemed guest, Marcus Evans. Marcus nodded, acknowledging the introduction. He felt the weight of the board's gaze, the scrutiny of those who held the company's future in their hands. But he also felt a quiet confidence, bolstered by Elijah's support. Richard continued, attempting to maintain control. While I recognize the need for some adjustments, we must also consider the practical implications. Our company has been successful under the current structure, and drastic changes could be destabilizing. Elijah leaned forward, his expression calm yet firm. I believe the real risk lies in maintaining the status quo, Richard. A company that respects and values all its employees is a stronger, more resilient one. And it's clear from recent events that there's a desire for change here. Marcus glanced around the table, noting the varying expressions of the board members. Some appeared open and thoughtful, while others seemed skeptical, their gazes lingering on him with a hint of doubt. Taking a deep breath, Marcus spoke up. I know I'm not an executive or someone you're used to seeing at these meetings, but I represent many of our employees who feel unheard. We need a workplace where everyone feels respected and valued, regardless of their position." The sincerity in Marcus's voice resonated, and he sensed a shift in the room. A few board members nodded thoughtfully, their expressions softening as they considered his words. Richard, however, was not easily swayed. "And what do you suggest, Marcus? How do you propose we implement these changes without compromising our operations?" Marcus met Richard's gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "We start with open dialogue. Create forums where employees can share their experiences and ideas for improvement. Implement diversity and inclusion training for all levels of staff. Small steps that lead to big changes." Elijah chimed in, reinforcing Marcus's points. "We also need to ensure accountability. This isn't just about policies, but about changing the culture. It's time for leadership to set the example." The room fell silent as the board members absorbed the suggestions. Marcus could see the calculations being made, the considerations of profit versus principle. It was a delicate balance, but one he believed was worth striving for. Finally, one of the board members, a woman named Linda, spoke up. "I think Marcus and Elijah make compelling points. Our reputation is built not just on our success, but on how we treat our people. If we can lead by example, we can create a more loyal and engaged workforce." Her words seemed to tip the scales, and Marcus felt a swell of hope. The conversation continued, with more members voicing their support for a cultural shift. Richard, sensing the tide turning against him, grudgingly acknowledged the need for action. "Very well," Richard conceded, though his voice was tight. "We'll move forward with these initiatives, but I expect regular updates and evaluations to ensure they're effective." Elijah nodded in agreement. "We'll work together to make this a reality. Thank you, Richard, and thank you all for recognizing the importance of this endeavor." As the meeting adjourned, Marcus felt a sense of accomplishment. It was just the beginning, but it was a significant step towards creating a workplace that valued every voice. As he left the boardroom alongside Elijah, he couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Elijah clapped a hand on Marcus's back as they walked down the corridor. "You did well in there, Marcus. It's not easy standing up to power, but you handled yourself with grace." Marcus smiled, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thank you, Elijah. I couldn't have done it without your support." The day continued, filled with a mix of anticipation and cautious optimism. Marcus returned to his duties, but the atmosphere was different. Employees approached him, expressing their gratitude and support for his actions. He realized that he had become a symbol of change, a beacon of hope for those who had long felt overlooked. As the afternoon sun began to dip towards the horizon, Marcus found himself in the break room, sipping a cup of coffee. The events of the day replayed in his mind, each moment a reminder of the power of courage and conviction. The afternoon wore on, and as Marcus returned to his duties, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted. The air at Whitmore Enterprises seemed lighter, as if a collective breath had been taken, releasing tension that had long simmered beneath the surface. Conversations reverberated through the hallways, filled with a new energy and optimism. As Marcus moved through the building, he noticed the subtle changes in how people interacted with him. Where once there had been indifference or dismissiveness, there were now nods of acknowledgement and warm greetings. It was a small but powerful validation of the stand he had taken, reaffirming his belief that change, while difficult, was possible. Meanwhile, Richard Whitmore sat in his office, brooding over the events of the day. The board meeting had not gone as he had planned, and he struggled to maintain a facade of control. It irked him to have been put in a position where he had to concede to demands he felt undermined his authority. The fact that it was a janitor who had spurred this change was particularly galling. "Jane," Richard called out, summoning his executive assistant. She appeared promptly, notebook in hand, ready to take instructions. "I need a full report on the proposed changes and how they might impact our bottom line. I want to be kept updated on every stage." Jane nodded, jotting down notes with practiced efficiency. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. I'll coordinate with the relevant departments to ensure you have all the information you need." Richard leaned back in his chair, his mind whirring. He was determined to regain control, to find a way to turn the situation to his advantage. He couldn't afford to lose face, not with the eyes of the board and Elijah Evans scrutinizing his every move. As the day drew to a close, Marcus found himself in the break room once again, this time joined by a small group of colleagues. Among them was Linda, the board member who had spoken up in support of the proposed changes. She approached Marcus with a warm smile. "Marcus, I just wanted to say how impressed I was with your presentation today," Linda said, her tone genuine. "You spoke with such conviction and clarity. It's rare to see someone stand up for what's right with such courage." Marcus felt a flush of pride at her words. "Thank you, Linda. It means a lot to hear that from you. I just hope we can turn those words into real action." Linda nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's a process, but I believe we're on the right path. And with Elijah's backing, we have a real chance to make meaningful changes." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Elijah himself, who entered the break room with his characteristic calm authority. He greeted Linda warmly before turning to Marcus. "There you are, Marcus. I've been looking for you," Elijah said, his eyes crinkling with a smile. "I thought we might discuss some of the next steps over dinner." "My treat." Marcus hesitated for a moment, the offer catching him off guard. He was still getting used to the idea of being part of these discussions, to having a seat at the table. But Elijah's encouragement was hard to resist. "I'd like that, Elijah." "Thank you," Marcus replied, his gratitude evident. As they left the office together, Marcus felt the weight of the day's events begin to lift. There was still much work to be done, but he was no longer alone in his efforts. With Elijah by his side, he felt ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. They settled into a cozy corner booth at a nearby restaurant, the ambiance warm and inviting. Elijah ordered with the ease of someone who frequented the place, and soon they were ensconced in conversation, the day's tensions melting away. "Elijah, I still can't believe how quickly everything happened," Marcus admitted as they waited for their meals. "One day I'm just doing my job, and the next I'm in a board meeting with the company's top executives." Elijah chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "Life has a way of surprising us, Marcus, and sometimes it takes someone brave enough to speak up to spark the change that's needed." Marcus nodded, reflecting on how far he'd come in such a short span. "I just hope we can keep the momentum going. It feels like we've only just begun." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their food, the sense of rich flavors filling the air. They ate in companionable silence for a few moments before Elijah turned the topic to the future. "We'll need to outline a detailed plan for implementing these changes," Elijah said, his tone serious. "It's important we have clear goals and timelines so we can measure our progress." Marcus agreed, his thoughts already turning to the practicalities of such an undertaking. "I've been thinking about starting with focus groups, small gatherings where employees can voice their concerns and ideas. It would help us understand what's really going on at every level." Elijah nodded approvingly. "That's a great idea. It's crucial to involve everyone in the process, to make them feel invested in the outcome." As they talked, Marcus felt a renewed sense of determination. The road ahead would be challenging, no doubt, but with Elijah's guidance and the support of his colleagues, he believed they could create a workplace that was inclusive and respectful for all. Back at Whitmore Enterprises, Richard Whitmore was not idle. He sat in his office poring over reports and financial statements, searching for any leverage he could find. He was determined to retain his position of power, even if it meant playing politics to his advantage. Richard's mind churned with schemes and strategies. If he could prove that the proposed changes were financially untenable, he might sway the board back in his favor. He was not above using every tool at his disposal to maintain his authority. As the evening stretched into night, Richard's resolve hardened. He would not be sidelined by a janitor and an investor, no matter how well-meaning their intentions. He had built this company into a success, and he would not let it be upended by idealistic notions. The next day dawned bright and clear, bringing with it the promise of a new chapter for Whitmore Enterprises. Marcus arrived at the office early, eager to begin the work of transforming the company's culture. He was greeted warmly by colleagues as he made his rounds, their support bolstering his resolve. Marcus spent the morning meeting with various department heads, discussing the formation of employee focus groups and outlining the steps needed to implement the new initiatives. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many expressing relief at the prospect of having their voices heard. As the day progressed, Marcus felt a sense of accomplishment building within him. The path ahead was still uncertain, but each step forward brought them closer to a workplace that valued every individual. It was a vision worth fighting for, and he was determined to see it through. Meanwhile, Richard continued to maneuver behind the scenes, meeting with key allies and strategizing his next move. He was not one to give up easily, and he was determined to find a way to turn the tide back in his favor. But as the week unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the changes were gaining momentum. Employees began to speak up more freely, sharing their ideas and concerns with a newfound confidence. The focus groups were a resounding success, providing valuable insights into the issues that needed to be addressed. Marcus found himself at the center of this transformation, a role he embraced with humility and determination. He worked tirelessly alongside Elijah and the other leaders, ensuring that the voices of all employees were heard and that their concerns were addressed. As the days turned into weeks, the culture at Whitmore Enterprises began to shift. The changes were subtle at first, but gradually, a new spirit of inclusivity and respect took hold. Employees who had once felt marginalized now found themselves empowered, their contributions recognized and valued. For Marcus, it was a deeply gratifying experience. He had set out to make a difference, and now he could see the tangible results of his efforts. It was a testament to the power of courage and conviction, and a reminder that one person could indeed spark meaningful change. And though Richard continued to resist, he found himself increasingly isolated. The board, swayed by the positive impact of the changes, began to question his leadership. It was a humbling realization for a man who had once wielded such unchallenged authority. In the end, Marcus's actions had not only transformed the company, but had also set a new standard for what a workplace could be. It was a victory not just for him, but for everyone who had ever felt overlooked or undervalued. As he walked through the halls of Whitmore Enterprises, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and fulfillment. He had taken a stand, and in doing so had changed the course of the company's future. It was a legacy he could be proud of, and one that would continue to inspire others for years to come. With each passing day, the changes at Whitmore Enterprises became increasingly visible. The atmosphere was more inclusive, and employees felt empowered to voice their ideas and concerns. Marcus, who had become a symbol of this transformation, was deeply gratified by the progress. Yet amidst the positive developments, a sense of unease lingered. Richard Whitmore, though outwardly compliant, was far from defeated. Behind the scenes, he was orchestrating a plan to regain control. His resentment simmered beneath a polished exterior, and he was determined to turn the tide in his favor. One afternoon, as Marcus was wrapping up a meeting with department heads, Jane approached him with a look of concern. "Marcus, do you have a moment? There's something you should see," she said, handing him a manila envelope. Marcus took the envelope, puzzled by its unexpected appearance. "What is it, Jane?" he asked, sensing the urgency in her voice. Jane glanced around, ensuring they were out of earshot. "I found this on my desk this morning. It's from Richard's office. I think you should take a look." Curiosity piqued, Marcus opened the envelope and scanned the contents. His eyes widened as he realized what he held. Financial documents and emails suggesting Richard had been funneling company funds into a private account, potentially embezzling money from Whitmore Enterprises. It was a bombshell revelation, one that could topple Richard's carefully constructed empire. Marcus felt a mix of disbelief and anger. Richard's actions were not only unethical, but a betrayal of the company and its employees. The implications were staggering, and Marcus knew he had to act quickly. "Thank you, Jane. This changes everything," Marcus said, his mind racing with possibilities. "I need to speak with Elijah immediately." Jane nodded, her expression resolute. "I thought you should know. This could be the leverage we need to finally hold Richard accountable." Marcus wasted no time in contacting Elijah. They arranged to meet at a discreet cafe away from the prying eyes of the office. As Marcus explained the situation, Elijah's expression grew increasingly grave. "You're certain about this?" Elijah asked, his voice low and serious. Marcus nodded, handing over the documents. "It's all here. Richard's been siphoning money for months, maybe even years. We have enough evidence to take this to the board and the authorities, if necessary." Elijah's eyes hardened as he reviewed the papers, a steely resolve forming. "This explains a lot. Richard's been playing a dangerous game, and now it's caught up with him. We need to act swiftly and decisively." They spent the next few hours crafting a strategy, knowing the stakes were high. Richard's duplicity had to be exposed, but they needed to ensure they had the board's backing to remove him from his position. It was a delicate balance of power and politics. The following day, Marcus and Elijah convened an emergency meeting with the board of directors. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense, the gravity of the situation palpable. Richard, unaware of the impending confrontation, sat at the head of the table, projecting his usual air of authority. Elijah began the meeting with a measured tone. "Thank you all for gathering on such short notice. We've come across some information that requires immediate attention." Richard's eyes flickered with curiosity, but he maintained his composure. "What seems to be the issue, Elijah?" Elijah exchanged a glance with Marcus before continuing. "It has come to our attention that there have been financial irregularities under your management, Richard. We have evidence suggesting that company funds have been misappropriated." A murmur rippled through the room as the board members exchanged shocked looks. Richard's expression darkened, his confidence faltering for the first time. "This is preposterous," Richard scoffed, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "I demand to see this so-called evidence." Marcus passed the documents around the table, each board member reviewing the proof of Richard's misconduct. The air was thick with tension as they absorbed the shocking revelations. Linda, the board member who had supported Marcus's initiatives, was one of the first to speak. "Richard, this is serious. These documents clearly show a pattern of financial mismanagement. You owe us an explanation." Richard's facade cracked, and he leaned forward, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "These are lies, fabrications. I've been nothing but dedicated to this company." Elijah's voice was calm but firm. "The evidence speaks for itself, Richard. We've verified these documents, and the implications are clear. This kind of behavior is unacceptable and puts the entire company at risk." Richard's gaze darted around the room, searching for allies, but he found only wary eyes and skeptical expressions. The board, once firmly under his influence, was now united in their concern for the company's future. Marcus watched as Richard's resistance crumbled, the weight of his actions finally catching up to him. It was a moment of vindication, but also of sadness, seeing a once respected leader brought low by his own greed. In the end, the board unanimously voted to suspend Richard pending a full investigation. The decision was met with a mix of relief and apprehension, the realization that the company's future now lay in the hands of those committed to integrity and transparency. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus felt a profound sense of achievement. They had faced a formidable challenge and emerged victorious, setting Whitmore Enterprises on a new path. But he also understood that this was just the beginning. There was much work to be done to rebuild trust and ensure the company's values aligned with its actions. Elijah approached Marcus, a look of respect in his eyes. "You've done something remarkable here, Marcus. It's not easy to stand up to power and hold it accountable." Marcus nodded, humbled by the compliment. "I couldn't have done it without your support, Elijah. This is a victory for everyone who believes in doing what's right." As they left the boardroom, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was challenging, but filled with promise. Whitmore Enterprises was on the brink of transformation, and he was determined to see it through. The days following Richard Whitmore's suspension were a whirlwind of activity at Whitmore Enterprises. The news of his misconduct had sent shockwaves through the company, leaving employees both stunned and relieved. For Marcus, the victory was sweet, but tempered by the knowledge that much remained to be done to restore trust and guide the company to a brighter future. With Richard out of the picture, the board moved swiftly to appoint an interim CEO, Linda, whose reputation for integrity and fairness made her a natural choice. Her first order of business was to reassure the staff and outline the path forward, emphasizing a commitment to transparency and inclusivity. Marcus, now more engaged than ever, found himself at the heart of these efforts. His role had evolved from janitorial duties to a more strategic position, tasked with helping to implement the cultural changes he had championed. It was a role he embraced with enthusiasm, eager to ensure that the values he believed in became a permanent part of the company's ethos. One morning, as Marcus walked into the office, he was greeted by the sight of employees gathered in small groups, discussing the latest developments. There was a buzz of optimism in the air, a sense that a new era was dawning for Whitmore Enterprises. "Marcus," called out Sarah, a colleague from Human Resources, as she caught up with him in the hallway. "Do you have a moment? We're about to start the first employee focus group, and I thought you might want to join us." Marcus smiled, pleased to see the initiative taking shape. "I'd love to," lead the way. The focus group was held in one of the company's conference rooms, a bright and welcoming space designed to encourage open dialogue. Employees from various departments were present, eager to share their thoughts and experiences. As the session began, Marcus listened intently, taking notes as participants spoke candidly about their hopes and concerns. It was a humbling experience, hearing firsthand how the company's previous culture had affected them, and he was determined to ensure their voices were heard. "I've been with the company for over a decade," said Tom, a senior technician, "and I've never felt as hopeful as I do now. It's like we're finally being seen and valued for our contributions." Others echoed Tom's sentiments, expressing gratitude for the changes already underway and offering suggestions for further improvements. Marcus was heartened by their enthusiasm, knowing that their collective efforts would help shape the company's future. After the focus group concluded, Marcus spent some time reflecting on the insights he had gathered. There was a common theme among the feedback, a desire for ongoing communication and opportunities for personal and professional growth. It was clear that the company's success depended not only on financial metrics, but on the well-being and satisfaction of its employees. Later that afternoon, Marcus met with Linda and Elijah to discuss the findings. They convened in Linda's office, a space that had once belonged to Richard, but now felt decidedly more welcoming. "Thank you for joining us, Marcus," Linda said as they settled into their seats. "I've heard great things about the focus group. What's your take?" Marcus shared the highlights of the session, emphasizing the importance of maintaining open lines of communication and fostering an environment where employees felt empowered to contribute. "It's clear that people are eager for change," Marcus concluded. "We need to keep building on that momentum and ensure everyone feels included in the process." Linda nodded thoughtfully. "Agreed. We've made a strong start, but there's still a long way to go. I'm confident that with your help, we can create a culture that truly reflects our values." Elijah chimed in, his tone encouraging. "Marcus, your leadership has been instrumental in getting us to this point. I have no doubt that you'll continue to be a driving force as we move forward." Marcus felt a swell of pride at their words, his resolve strengthened by their support. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every challenge, every sleepless night. Together they were building something meaningful, something that would endure long after the dust had settled. As the meeting wrapped up, Marcus returned to his office feeling energized and inspired. He spent the rest of the afternoon drafting a detailed plan for the next phase of the company's transformation, outlining initiatives that would promote diversity, inclusion, and employee engagement. Meanwhile, the impact of Richard's suspension continued to ripple through the company. Departments that had once operated in silos began to collaborate more closely, sharing resources and expertise to achieve common goals. It was a wholesale shift in mindset, one that promised to unlock new levels of creativity and innovation. Marcus was particularly excited about a new mentorship program that had been proposed, pairing seasoned employees with newer hires to foster knowledge sharing and career development. It was an idea that resonated deeply with him, reflecting his belief in the power of community and support. As the week progressed, the changes at Whitmore Enterprises became increasingly evident. Employees who had once felt marginalized now found themselves included in decision-making processes, their insights and expertise recognized and valued. For Marcus, it was a deeply rewarding experience. He had set out to make a difference, and now he could see the tangible results of his efforts. It was a testament to the power of courage and conviction, and a reminder that one person could indeed spark meaningful change. One afternoon, as Marcus was preparing to leave the office, he was approached by Jane, who had been instrumental in uncovering Richard's misconduct. She looked both excited and nervous, as if she had news to share. "Marcus, do you have a minute?" Jane asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Of course, Jane. What's up?" Marcus replied, curious about what had her so animated. "I just got word from Linda that the board has decided to make your role permanent," Jane said, her voice filled with excitement. "They're creating a new position for you, Director of Employee Engagement. It's a testament to the incredible work you've done." Marcus was momentarily speechless, the news taking him by surprise. It was a recognition of his efforts and a validation of his vision for the company. As the realization sank in, he felt a profound sense of gratitude and satisfaction. "That's incredible, Jane. I'm honored," Marcus finally replied, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without the support of everyone here." Jane smiled warmly, clearly pleased by his reaction. You've earned it, Marcus. We're all so proud of what you've achieved. As Marcus left the office that evening, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. It had been a path filled with challenges and triumphs, each step a testament to the power of persistence and belief in doing what was right. Marcus walked through the doors of Whitmore Enterprises the next morning with a new title and a renewed sense of purpose. The announcement of his role as Director of Employee Engagement had been met with overwhelming support and enthusiasm from his colleagues. It was a pivotal moment, not just for him personally, but for the company as a whole. As he settled into his new office, a space that symbolized the trust and responsibility placed in him, Marcus took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. The journey from janitor to director had been unexpected and challenging, yet deeply rewarding. He felt ready to embrace the opportunities and responsibilities that lay ahead. His first order of business was to meet with various department heads to discuss the ongoing initiatives aimed at fostering a more inclusive and dynamic work environment. The mentorship program was a particular point of interest, and Marcus was eager to see it come to fruition. In the conference room, department heads gathered to discuss the logistics of the mentorship initiative. The room buzzed with anticipation as Marcus outlined the goals and expectations. This program is about more than just pairing mentors with mentees, Marcus explained, his voice steady and confident. It's about creating a culture of learning and support where everyone feels empowered to share their knowledge and grow together. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with department heads expressing their excitement and commitment to the program. Marcus felt a surge of pride as he watched the team collaborate, their passion for the company's future evident in every discussion. As the meeting concluded, Marcus spent some time chatting with colleagues, gathering feedback and suggestions. It was clear that the changes were having a positive impact, and employees were eager to contribute to the ongoing transformation. Later that afternoon, Marcus received a call from Elijah, who had been a steady source of support and guidance throughout the tumultuous changes. They agreed to meet at a nearby cafe to catch up and discuss the latest developments. Over coffee, Elijah listened attentively as Marcus shared the progress of the initiatives and the enthusiasm with which they had been received. Elijah's eyes crinkled with satisfaction as he absorbed the news. You're doing remarkable work, Marcus, Elijah said, his voice warm with pride. It's not easy to shift a company's culture, but you've managed to inspire and lead with integrity. Marcus smiled, grateful for Elijah's unwavering belief in him. I couldn't have done it without your support, Elijah. You've been a mentor and a friend, and I'm thankful for everything you've done. They continued their conversation, discussing ideas for future projects and the potential for expanded community outreach. Marcus was particularly excited about the possibility of partnering with local organizations to support youth education and career development, an initiative that resonated deeply with his own experiences. As they wrapped up their meeting, Elijah offered one final piece of advice. Remember, Marcus, true leadership is about empowering others. You've laid the groundwork. Now it's time to nurture and grow the seeds you've planted. Marcus nodded, absorbing Elijah's words. It was a reminder of the responsibility he carried, not just to lead, but to inspire and uplift those around him. Back at the office, Marcus dove into his work with renewed vigor, meeting with teams and facilitating discussions that encourage creativity and innovation. He was driven by a vision of a company where every employee felt valued and supported, and he was determined to make that vision a reality. The weeks that followed were filled with a flurry of activity. The mentorship program launched successfully, with employees from all levels eager to participate. Marcus was heartened by the enthusiasm and commitment shown by both mentors and mentees, their shared experiences fostering a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. In parallel, the focus groups continued to provide valuable insights, highlighting areas where further improvements could be made. Marcus made it a point to regularly attend these sessions, ensuring that he remained connected to the pulse of the organization. As the company culture evolved, Marcus noticed a marked increase in employee engagement and satisfaction. Productivity soared, and the collaborative spirit that had taken root began to yield tangible results. It was a testament to the power of a unified vision and the impact of positive leadership. Amidst the progress, Marcus remained vigilant, aware that sustaining these changes required ongoing effort and dedication. He worked closely with Linda and the board to ensure that the initiatives were integrated into the company's long-term strategy, cementing their place in the organizational fabric. One afternoon, as Marcus was reviewing reports in his office, he received an unexpected visitor. It was Tom, the senior technician who had spoken up during the first focus group. He appeared both excited and a bit nervous as he approached Marcus's desk. "Hi, Marcus. Do you have a minute?" Tom asked, his voice tinged with anticipation. "Of course, Tom. What's on your mind?" Marcus replied, curious about what had brought Tom to his office. Tom took a seat, his expression earnest. "I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. The changes we've seen, it's like night and day. I've been with the company for years, and I've never felt this optimistic about our future." Marcus felt a swell of pride at Tom's words. "Thank you, Tom. It means a lot to hear that. We've come a long way, and I'm glad to see it making a difference." Tom nodded, his gaze sincere. "It's inspired me to get more involved. I've been thinking about starting a peer support group, something informal where employees can share experiences and support each other. I think it could really help foster our sense of community." Marcus's eyes lit up at the idea. "That sounds fantastic, Tom. I'd love to help you get it started. It's initiatives like these that will keep us moving forward." As Tom left the office, Marcus reflected on the power of collective action and the importance of fostering an environment where everyone felt empowered to contribute. It was a reminder that true transformation was a shared journey, one that required the commitment and passion of every individual. With each passing day, Whitmore Enterprises continued to evolve, becoming a beacon of inclusivity and innovation. Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment as he watched the company thrive, knowing that the changes they had implemented were not just beneficial, but necessary for sustained success. As the week drew to a close, Marcus found himself on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city skyline. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the buildings in a warm golden glow. It was a moment of quiet reflection, a chance to appreciate the journey that had brought him to this point. Marcus was acutely aware of how far he had come, from a janitor overhearing dismissive remarks to a director leading cultural transformation. It had been a path filled with challenges and triumphs, each step a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and the unwavering belief in doing what was right. As Marcus stood on the rooftop terrace, the city lights twinkling below, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. From janitor to director of employee engagement, he had navigated challenges that tested his resolve and shaped his character. The transformation at Whitmore Enterprises was a testament to the power of integrity, collaboration, and the belief that every voice mattered. Under his leadership, the company had flourished, embracing a culture where inclusivity and innovation thrived. Employees were more engaged and motivated, their contributions recognized and valued. The mentorship and peer support programs had strengthened the sense of community, fostering an environment where everyone felt empowered to grow and succeed. Marcus knew there would always be challenges ahead, but the foundation they had built was strong, rooted in the principles of respect and equality. As he gazed at the horizon, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment and optimism for the future. This journey had not only transformed a company, but had also reaffirmed Marcus's belief in the power of courage, resilience, and the human spirit. He had proven that one person could indeed make a difference, inspiring others to stand up for what was right. With a heart full of gratitude and hope, Marcus turned back toward the IMUS, ready to continue the work that lay ahead. The story of Whitmore Enterprises was far from over, and he was determined to help write its next chapter, one of integrity, innovation, and shared success. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.